I failed over 40 cloud engineering interviews before I finally figured out what hiring managers actually wanted to hear. And the crazy part is I had the technical skills, I had built real AWS projects, and I knew the material, but I kept getting rejected at the final stage. For 8 months straight, I was interviewing and stacking rejections after rejections, over 40 in total. The lowest moment was getting turned down for a role I was clearly overqualified for. And I remember sitting in my car after thinking, what am I doing wrong? And how am I still not getting hired? Then everything changed when I shifted one thing about how I answered interview questions. And that single shift took me from constant rejections to multiple offers on the table. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact framework I used to answer technical questions, the specific mistakes that were quietly killing my interviews, and how to position yourself so hiring managers see you as the obvious choice. I want to be brutally honest about why I failed over 40 cloud engineer interviews, because it wasn't due to a lack of AWS knowledge, project experience, or effort. I had the skills. I built real AWS projects, I studied nonstop, and yet I kept getting rejected over and over again. The pattern was always the same, where I passed the recruiter screen, passed the technical phone screen, and even passed hands-on challenges or take-home assignments. But the moment I reached the final interview with the senior engineers, lead architects, or the hiring manager, everything fell apart. For months, I couldn't understand why. And I kept telling myself, maybe I need another certification, maybe I need another project, or maybe I'm just not ready yet. But none of that was the real problem. After reviewing my interviews, talking to mentors, and being painfully honest with myself, I realized I was making the same mistakes every single time. There were 3 fatal mistakes that cost me more than 40 job offers. Fatal mistake number 1 was that I gave technically correct answers that were completely generic and forgettable. I could define what a VPC was, explain auto-scaling, and talk about S3 durability, but none of my answers prove I actually had used these tools to solve real engineer problems. I sounded like somebody who memorized AWS documentation instead of someone who had built, broken, and troubleshooted real infrastructure, and that alone was enough to eliminate me. Fatal mistake number 2 was that I never connected my technical decisions to business impact. Hiring managers don't care that you used an application load balancer. They care why you used it, what problem it solved, how it reduced downtime, improved reliability, or saved the company money. In my interviews, I wasn't explaining any of that, and instead, I just listed technologies without speaking the language of engineers who understand the business. Fatal mistake number 3 was that I wasn't telling stories that demonstrated real problem solving. Companies don't hire candidates who can repeat AWS definitions. They hire people who can explain challenges they faced, how they approached them, and what went wrong, how they fixed it, and what they learned. I wasn't sharing late night debugging moments, explaining trade-offs decisions, or walking interviewers through obstacles and how I overcame them, so I sounded like a student instead of an engineer in the trenches. Those 3 mistakes are exactly why I failed over 40 interviews back to back, even though I actually knew what I was doing. Once I understood that, everything changed, including my communication, my confidence, and my interview outcomes almost overnight. After failing 40 interviews, I realized something most candidates never learn, which is that technical interviews are not about how much you know, but about how you think. Hiring managers are not listening for memorized definitions. They're listening for decision-making, judgment, and the ability to solve problems like an actual engineer. That's when I created the framework that completely changed my interview performance. The framework is simple, but incredibly powerful. Problem, solution, impact, and learning. This structure instantly separates you from candidates who just recites AWS facts, because instead of giving definitions, you demonstrate real experience and real decisions. Most candidates answer questions at the surface level by saying things like a VPC is this, or a security group is stateful, which are just definitions anyone can memorize. Engineers communicate through context, problems they solve, and lessons they've learned. And this framework forces you to think and speak like an engineer. There are 5 interview questions you must master. And if you can answer these using this framework, you will dominate dominate most cloud interviews. The first is tell me about yourself, which is not your life story, but a 90-second positioning statement covering your background, pivot into cloud, projects, skills, and the value you bring today. The second is walk me through a project you've built where you must tell a story about the problem you solved, the architecture you designed, why you made those decisions, the challenges you hit, and the results you've achieved. The third is describe a time you face a technical challenge, which is your opportunity to turn obstacles into proof of problem solving using problem, solution, impact, and learning. The fourth is how you would design a specific architecture where the interviewer is evaluating how you think, not whether your answer is perfect, so you must think out loud and explain trade-offs. The fifth is why do you want this role? And this answer should be specific by tying your project experience directly to their environment and challenges. That is going to be a home run. When applying this framework to real questions, you never stop at definitions. If asked about security groups versus NACLs, you want to go ahead and explain the problem you faced, the solution you implemented, the impact it had, and what you learned from it. If asked about a failure, you walk through what broke, how you fixed it, what the outcome was, and how you improved the system afterward. If asked about infrastructure as code, you reference your Terraform project and explain structure, workflows, and value in terms of consistency, speed, and reduce human error. If you're an IT professional getting interviews but not landing offers, I run an 8-week program where we prepare you for these exact interview scenarios with mock interviews, technical coaching, and the frameworks that actually get you hired. Click the first link in the description to learn more. Once I understood why I was failing interviews, I built a preparation system that made it almost impossible to fall again. Most candidates spend all their time studying AWS documentations, but almost no time practicing how to communicate their experience. They know what an application load balancer is, but they can't explain why they chose it or what problem it solved, and that's why they lose. The first step is writing complete stories for each project, covering the problem it solved, why decisions were made, trade-offs considered, the challenges you faced, the failures you ran into, what specific impact was delivered, and the lessons you've learned. The second step is practicing the 5 core interview questions out loud until the answers are confident, clear, and natural without sounding rehearsed. The third step is preparing star stories for behavioral questions by connecting situation, task, action, and result back to real project work. You should have one preparation document that includes your project's problem solution impact learning breakdowns, star stories, core questions, and technical lessons learned, which becomes your personal interview playbook. This playbook eliminates nerves, prevents you from rambling, and ensures you always have strong examples ready. You will be asked about tools you haven't used before, and the correct response is to acknowledge what you know, explain how you would learn it, relate it to similar tools, and describe how you would validate your understanding. That response shows competence, confidence, and a growth mindset. Always prepare 3 to 5 smart questions that show you understand engineering challenges, success metrics, onboarding, tools improvements, and deployment processes. Those questions position you as a contributor instead of a passenger. I failed over 40 cloud engineer interviews because I gave technically correct but generic answers that didn't prove I could do the job. What changed everything was learning to communicate like an engineer using problem, solution, impact, and learning frameworks. You can keep bombing interviews and wondering why your knowledge isn't enough, or you can learn to tell stories about problems you've solved, decisions you've made, and the value you've created. If you want our team to coach you through interview prep with mock interviews, this exact framework, and a guarantee you land a job within 12 months, click the first link in the description below, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.